kala likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabla lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabla Shabbat Shalom Shabbat Shalom Shabbat Shalom U'Mevorach Shabbat Shalom Shabbat Shalom Shabbat Shalom U'Mevorach Shalom Aleichem Ohavei HaShalom Shomrei Shalom Shalom Aleichem Rodefei HaShalom Shalom Aleichem Boechem LeShalom Ohavei HaShalom Tzedchem LeShalom Miyom ze leyamim habayim Shalom Aleichem Shalom Aleichem Ohavei HaShalom Shomrei Shalom Shalom Aleichem Rodefei HaShalom Shalom Aleichem Boechem LeShalom Ohavei HaShalom Tzedchem LeShalom Miyom ze leyamim habayim Shalom Aleichem
Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to what has now become the series finale of our special format pandemic era YouTube Shabbat get-togethers. It's been a very interesting journey, and I've been so grateful for the technology, but nothing can replace coming together in person. And as you can see from the words over my right shoulder, we will be gathering again in person on Friday night, July 16th, at 7 p.m. in our meeting room. We'll have information on live streaming those services fairly soon. We're looking into some of our options. During this period where we are sort of still in the pandemic and yet also vaccinated and feeling much safer about attending, at our services, we will be welcoming those who are fully vaccinated. And that is defined as being 2 weeks from whatever shot it is that you had. If, for some reason, medical only, you are unable to be vaccinated, and that's the only reason that we'll be able to accommodate you, is if it's for medical reasons, we ask that you contact us in advance of the service. We will ask you to wear a mask at the service, and we will provide you with a socially distanced location in order to also be with us together. So contact us in advance if you have a medical reason that you're unable to attend or that you're not vaccinated and still would like to attend in person. Anyway, I've enjoyed doing these very much, but nothing can replace being together in person, and where we will be able to do what we're going to do by video right now, which is light our candles and welcome Shabbat.
Baruch haor ba'olam Baruch haor ba'adam Baruch haor b'shalom B'shalom ברוך האור, ברוך האור, בשבת.
This is an exciting time, and as humanistic Jews, we view the creation of the vaccines that have allowed us to return to some semblance of normal life as a reason for gratitude and for rejoicing. In traditional Judaism, there is a prayer, a blessing, called the Birkat HaGomel, the blessing of thanksgiving. Here's a humanistic interpretation. May we who have come in safety to this moment show our gratitude by bringing goodness and light to others, especially to those who are in need and unsafe in the world. Let us empower ourselves to prevent all harm when it is in our hands to do so, and let us see and believe in the potential that exists within us, within everyone, within everything, to provide care and compassion and healing whenever we are able. Let's continue with this beautiful song of hope, Bashana Haba'ah, in the year to come. Our ancestors hallowed the Sabbath day. In dark times it was a refuge for them, and in times of prosperity it gave them rest and joy. As a community, we are grateful that we have had the opportunity to gather, even if only in spirit, each and every Shabbat since this pandemic began. We look forward now to a time when we will once again wish each other Shabbat Shalom in person. May our Shabbat celebrations always grant us rest from our stresses and refuge from our cares. May our Shabbat celebrations always provide us with the warmth of love and a sense of community. May our Shabbat celebrations always help us to feel our joys heightened and our sorrows softened by the love we give and that we receive.
ערב של שושנים, נצא נא אל הבוסתן, מור ושנים ולבונה, לרגלך מפתן. לילה יורד לאט, ורוח שושן נושבה, הווה אלחש לך שיר בלט, זמר של אהבה.
Throughout this period of challenges, I have taken and continue to take inspiration from the words of Eleanor Roosevelt that I've shared during this service from time to time. She wrote, "The encouraging thing is that every time you meet a situation, though you may think at the time it is an impossibility and you go through the tortures of the damned, once you have met it and lived through it, you find that forever after you are freer than you ever were before. If you can live through that, you can live through anything. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. The danger lies in refusing to face the fear, in not daring to come to grips with it. If you fail anywhere along the line, it will take away your confidence. You must make yourself succeed every time. You must do the thing you cannot do. I also like something that Winston Churchill once said. When you're going through hell, keep going. Let us strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our hearts, with our wisdom, with our actions. These are the ideas that we inscribe in our innermost heart. May we practice them day and night, teaching them diligently to our children through our words and especially through our deeds, so that the next generations learn to revere and celebrate life. Our guest tonight is Mabel Sinnett Fox, an expert in educational technology and a recently elected trustee of the Farmington School Board, the district where our temple is located. Ms. Fox is one of the few Michigan experts in virtual and remote learning, an expertise that, as we well know, has been in great demand since we began this pandemic. Her 30 years as an educational consultant has included working to supply, implement, and monitor virtual learning programs for school districts throughout the state. Along the way, she's also become a well-known and effective advocate for students with challenges, having experienced firsthand how problematic that can be as she guided her own two sons through the Farmington schools. Though I did not know with certainty that this would be, hopefully, our last of these Shabbat programs, it is fitting that we end this series with a discussion of how Zooming and other online technologies have transformed our world, particularly tonight, looking at the educational arena and what we can expect in the future. Ms. Fox, thank you so much for joining us. Um, the talk of the world right now is education, including virtual education, and you are an expert in this field and in many other areas, having been also, I should point out, recently elected to the Farmington School Board in the middle of the pandemic. What are your thoughts on where we are in the state of education right now?
As you just mentioned, I am a newly elected school board trustee with the Farmington Public Schools. So I really just want to begin to visualize to some degree about the innovation of Farmington Public Schools and schools throughout, the state of Michigan and the United States. Last November, myself and others were elected to the school board, and we jumped in immediately after our November 3rd election, because we knew that the COVID pandemic had been going on almost a year at that point, and that how it has changed the landscape of teaching and learning, that teachers had to move very quickly into a very unknown environment, that of remote learning, hybrid learning, streaming of information to students in various places throughout wherever they were at. And first and foremost, I want to congratulate these teachers, Farmington teachers and teachers throughout the country, for their commitment to move very quickly in the area that they were knew very little about, but yet they committed themselves to be able to provide a very different virtual method. And so we appreciate their commitment and thank them for what they have done over the past year.
How do you feel that our state and our nation are doing using the technology both before and after the pandemic?
I think that our state of Department of Education is doing an excellent job. I mean, competency-based education, they approved 20 years ago. We just have not embraced it in the way because we have thought that the college is the best way, when my argument is that college and career is equally as well. So the state has offered, and allowed us with standards and what have you in that area. As it relates to technology, our youngsters are very versed in parts of the technology. They do extremely well with their cell phone and what have you. But then when you get them into a virtual class, that they need some additional assistance in that way as well, because learning through a virtual modality is very different than learning face-to-face. Most youngsters who are successful in virtual learning, there is a maturity because they will have to do their own pacing. There's not a teacher who is saying, now we're going to start here instead of here. So, but because of the pandemic, so many of those students had to learn how to be a part of that learning process. And it was something that was very, very new to many of our students, as well as teachers.
There's been a lot of discussion about equity, and there seems to be, I don't know about Farmington, but throughout our entire region here, there seems to be real issues of inequity when it comes to accessing the technology necessary. Just simple basic things like having adequate Wi-Fi in the home.
Mm-hmm.
How do we overcome that in a world that is going to be increasingly virtual?
I would like to see our states, the state of Michigan and states throughout the country, to really take on the whole Wi-Fi system and be able to develop a system that everyone is able to access. And while it may cost, there may be, steps or channels of pricing to be able to do that. But when we went through the middle of the pandemic, there were schools, particularly urban and rural schools, where the equity was so there wasn't any equity, and I would read about, especially in the urban, I mean, not the rural area, I would actually read about how parents were invited to come and in the parking lot so that they could access the school Wi-Fi in the parking lot, or in a school bus would have those kinds of things. Those are barriers. I mean, congratulations to parents who took it seriously. And, every day after dinner, they have to drive somewhere to where they can access, what most of us in other parts of the state take for granted. And so I would like to see the state have a uniform Wi-Fi for all of us to be able to access.
The infrastructure bills that they're arguing about in Washington right now, I think, address the of broadband internet access, so forth. You were particularly involved professionally in not just textbooks, which are a kind of technology, I remind people, but
Back in the day,
but also this increasing online learning and hybrid and so forth. So, but before the pandemic, these were people who were choosing to do this, and now, as a result of the pandemic, and hopefully it's coming to its conclusion, at least in our region, you have people who were forced against their will to do this. And I know that even many children with very adequate Wi-Fi access really struggled with this, as did the teachers. My own daughter is a private school teacher, admittedly, but she maintained a hybrid situation that I think almost all the hairs in her head were pulled out at some point. How do you see the future of virtual learning and hybrid learning? Are we here? Is it here permanently, or will it disappear again?
I think it's here permanently. And I can tell you, based on my work with Michigan Virtual, what we're finding is more and more school districts who are setting up virtual schools. Because here's the deal. They're setting these virtual schools up because they need to be able, because first of all, there's some students that are not going to want to come back. There are students who get bullied. There are students who have anxiety. There are students who may need to work. And so they may need a more flexible educational environment. And school districts are seeing that. What happens if we have another pandemic? They no longer have to worry about how to pivot because they already have it here. So schools who traditionally did not have virtual schools, they are setting them up as we speak because they don't want to be caught offhand again, as well as the fact that there are a small number, but a significant number of students who don't want to go back into a building.
And you were, by virtue of your expertise, you were always an advocate of that and setting that up and helping folks with that. I definitely saw within my own community and just among friends with children that there were those who had the capacity, many times turned away from their public schools. I have friends, for instance, who are here in Royal Oak, and did not feel that for whatever reason the Royal Oak School District was doing such a great job with it. There was a lot of fighting back and forth about in-person and not in-person. And yes, as a result, they turned to, I would assume, the schools of the type that you helped to establish over the many years that were already experts in virtual education. And they had the means to do this because it cost money. Because many of these were not local. Do you think we'll be seeing more of that too? That simply people of means will say, I've had enough of this local school. I don't want to go to send them to Country Day or whatever the heck it is. Let's go virtual. And what are the positives and negatives of that?
Well, if you're talking about homeschooling,
Of a different sort. Yeah.
Of a different sort, yes. But there's increase, we're seeing an increase of parents and students who have decided to stay at home. You know, we've already have had over many years homeschooling as we know it. But it is going to increase. And it's going to increase because, as I've mentioned before, there are going to be reasons why students do not want to go into a formal setting, or parents feel like they're home and they're able to do a better job. And in some cases, because it's one-to-one instruction at the table, they probably will do a great job. And in some cases, a better job than a teacher with 30 kids in a classroom.
It's a new kind of homeschooling, isn't it? Where the parents don't have to become experts on ancient Greece and trigonometry. They can turn to the internet for supplemental assistance and that kind of thing. Are there trade-offs in terms of socialization for our children?
I think so. I think that we need to have a different way of socializing, because we had to, all of us, whether it was students or families, you know, because we were not able to meet up with each other, we used this little thing called the Zoom.
Which we're on right now.
Zoom and this technology. Do you think it's going to go away? No.
No.
But we use the Zoom. We use the Zoom for socializing. I can give you an example of my family Thanksgiving. I have two other sisters. One lives in Ypsilanti Township. The other lives in Detroit. I live here in Farmington. And so we did not have Thanksgiving together. But what we did have, we had game night, and we did bingo over the Zoom internet. And at first, one of my sisters was like, "Oh, this isn't going to be fun." We did game night for 3 hours on Zoom. So it is changing. The way in which we socialize may be a little different, particularly for adults. Now, with students, I mean, I think that there's still a need for kids who want to be in marching band, and kids who want to be, in the football or the soccer. Those things can continue, because even if you decide to homeschool, you can still access your local school for those kinds of socialized kinds of items that students are happy with, because they've got lots of kids with them. They can socialize. You know, I remember my son was in marching band at Farmington High School. I mean, it was just a wonderful thing for 4 years. So they get a lot from those kind of elective opportunities.
I was just talking to one of the young people I tutor for our bar and bat mitzvah program, and asking him about his socializing during the pandemic. A lot of gaming that they do. Apparently that's a thing. I'm not that familiar with it. It's not for my generation, but they do like to get on, and they do socialize that way. But having been in marching band myself for 4 years, I can tell you that is not something that you can do by yourself in your room. You do need other kids for sports and even for proms and things like that. Thank you so very much for spending this time with us, talking about this new world of education that we're in. Best wishes for your, I think it's a 6-year term you have, right?
Yes, it is.
On the school board. So that's good. That's a good amount of time to get something done.
Thank you so much for inviting me today. I appreciate it.
Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is dealing with conflict while honoring justice. Peace is not the absence of anger. Peace is expressing anger while honoring compassion. Peace is not the absence of desire. Peace is allowing for desire without the fantasy that fulfillment brings happiness. Peace is not the absence of fear. Peace is knowing how to move through fear. Peace is not the absence of self. Peace is knowing that the self is absent. May we cultivate the skills to live in peace, to live with honor, to live with justice, to live with compassion, to live with desire, to live with fear, to live with self, to live with emptiness. Peace is in our hands. In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support. Those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight we extend our well wishes to these members of our community and to their loved ones, to Evelyn Krieger, Joe Gaden, Julia Eliason, Karen Tremper-Harris, and Peter Schweitzer. I would also like to offer our thoughts of well wishes to the residents of the Champlain Towers in Surfside, Florida, particularly to my former colleague Ophi Osen Cohen and her family. May all those impacted by this tragedy find care and compassion in the healing arms of community. May all who suffer know that they are not alone, and may they be healed quickly. May they experience a complete recovery, refuah shlema, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits. Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of loss and of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight, we observe the yahrzeits of these members of our community and their loved ones, of Lucille Arking, William Ash, Carol Bass, Grace Grunberg, Daniel Kimber Houston, Emil Haas Milinski, Mary Fitzpatrick Phillips, Louis Skip Siegel, and Rose E. Vidra. Yehi zichram livracha, may memories of these beloved people provide a source of blessing to those who face life and its roads. in their absence. That's it, folks. That's a wrap on our pandemic era of YouTube services, at least in this format. I want to send a shout out to my husband, Arthur Liebhaber. He took on many, many different roles during this pandemic. And though his role in producing these Friday nights minimized over time, it was a lot to ask. Without him, I could not have accomplished this. He was my only companion, as your loved ones were your only companions for 14, 15 months. And I am deeply grateful to him, as our entire community should be, for all that he did. Let's close now with a song about peace and joy and love. Peace be with you. We'll see you on July 16th, 7 p.m. at 28611 West 12 Mile Road in Farmington Hills. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Peace be